Okay, well, can you take me back to your first period? Can you paint me a picture of like how old you were, where were you, who was around you? Can you remember any of the details?
Think I was 15.
Okay.
Um, and I think I was at home and I told my mum, and she was sweet. She said, like, congratulations, which was actually pretty good compared to a lot of parents at that
Mm,
time.
yeah.
Um, and then she showed me how to use tampons, and that was it. That was the start of my period.
Okay. Yeah. And how did that make you feel, do you think?
Um, I remember a few days before my period, I had period pain, and I thought I'd hurt my back. Like I thought I something was wrong.
Mm,
Um, and then I also remember, you know, around my first period times having quite a lot of PMT and stuff.
okay.
Um, but not really having the language to understand that that's what was going on. And I
Mm,
think that that's periods were quite hush hush. Um, they were kind of things that you didn't really talk about. Do you know what I mean? Um, and yeah, there, yeah, it was just like this thing that, yeah, wasn't spoken about really.
and had you
And
had any other conversations before you were 15 with your mum about like you might be
I
coming into getting your period soon or
think a couple of times my mum had said, and obviously they taught about it in school. So I
Mhm.
didn't know that, and also I had friends that had come on their periods quite a few years before because I was quite late.
Yeah.
Um, and so there was there was information about it coming. I just don't feel like there was very much about, and I think this is true of women in every stage, really. Um, I have women now that are talking about the menopause being like they don't tell you about this stuff.
Yeah.
That it's like it's kind of like this is gonna happen, you're gonna bleed, and that's it. And there isn't much about like the emotional or the physical processes that you go through.
Mm,
And like I said, I've known women from every stage of a woman's journey that have said that phrase of like they don't tell you about this, whether it's pregnancy, childbirth, miscarriages, menopause. Like there's a lot that is unspoken about with
mm. Yeah.
this.
The forgotten wisdom. And then after you got your period at 15, did you have any more conversations with your mom after then?
No.
No, that was it. And so what do you think her vocabulary, do you remember, was about having a period? What do you think she taught you?
That I think my mum, that periods were just something you dealt with, that they were just something you had and you dealt with each month,
Mm,
and they were just part of. what you had to cope with as a woman. Although I do think my mum was trying to be more celebratory about it than the generations that came before her.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was very. I don't think my mum thought about her period a lot. I think it was like just put a tampon in and get on with it. Was
Yeah.
kind
And so how did that shape your early teenage years and then your 20s with your relationship with your period?
so I don't think I had my relationship with my period in my teens and 20s. I think I think that I always had quite a heavy period, so I was quite annoyed by how heavy it was.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it was just it wasn't even something that you paid attention to really. It was like, oh, I'm bleeding. Okay, going to work. I used tampons so back then, so I'm gonna put tampon in.
Mm.
Um, and that was it really. There was some discussions about whether amongst my friends about whether you should have sex on your period or not, and that was about it. Like,
Wow, so conditioned from your mom, all the way up until what age did you start having like a spiritual awakening?
so I would say that my spiritual journey started before my journey with my period started.
Yeah.
Um, but really, when my relationship with my period changed, is I was in a, a retreat in Bulgaria, and a shaman gave us womb rights and told us that for the next 9 months we had to offer our blood to Mother Earth. And so
Mm.
that was the beginning of my spiritual period journey.
Wow.
I don't remember, I think I'd probably already started using a moon cup by then, but that was more for environmental reasons.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, that really changed my relationship with my period. Was those mother that I still offer my blood to Mother Earth. I've never stopped.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was the thing that changed my relationship with my period.
Wow.
And if
How old were you
anything,
then?
um, so I'm just trying to think. Probably 30.
30. Yeah. Around your Saturn return time. Interesting. And so did you grow up with any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, two brothers.
Ah, okay. And so are they older or younger?
Younger.
And were they in the house, when you got your period? And what was that vocabulary from your mom or from you like in your teenage years?
No. There wasn't any discussion about that.
Yeah. Mhm. And then did you ever know when your mum was on her period?
Um, I remember as a child seeing her use a tampon, like when we were in public toilets and stuff like that. So I remember that. And I pretty much would think I was aware of what it was.
Mhm.
Um, I remember me and my mum having an argument once, and my dad saying to me that women get this thing called PMT. What surprises me is I don't really know when my mum went through menopause.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Yeah.
Um, and to me, what saddens me about this very clinical, very patriarchal way of dealing with periods is just the loss of the ceremonies and the wisdom and the insight that, like, the Machinée ceremony is the ceremony when a girl gets her
Mm.
period. And I think it's very sad that that rite of passage isn't done. Um, and I think it's very sad that, like, I mean, I'm sure my mom spoke to her friends about the menopause, but the menopause is quite a big thing to go through.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
don't, I think it's quite sad that, like, family members that were probably living with her didn't know that she was going through menopause.
And how old is she now?
She's 71.
Oh, okay. So that was yeah, a few years ago now. Okay. And so your dad was in the house as well with your brothers when you got your first period?
I don't know if he was in the house or not. I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
how would you have your mom described her period, do you think? How would she have viewed her
I
own
never
period?
described it.
Never described it. Mm, yeah.
I think my mum liked the my mum's approach to periods was very practical, or at least any conversations she had with me. So information about tampons and sanitary towels and, like, just very practical, like how
Mm.
to practically deal with your period was where my mum's relationship with her period was.
And do you think that's rubbed off on you, especially in your like 20s?
I think in my 20s, yes, I don't really remember my period very much in my 20s. I think when you're gay, your period's even less of a thing because you're not really thinking about it from, certainly I know that people that were more likely to get pregnant than gay people I know were more concerned about where their cycle was at.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't really, I don't really remember my period in my 20s, to be
Did you
honest
ever
with you.
attract a woman in your life as a partner that was in tune with her cycle? Or is that
Um,
only like, or is that like more, could be more recently and like really?
so most of the women that I was in relationship with in my 20s were very disconnected from their period,
Mm.
almost hated their period because they were probably, well, most of them are now either taking tea or would be classified as non-binary. It's just we didn't have that language then.
Mm.
So for them, their period was a whole different, was a journey that made them deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, and was a whole set of issues and problems that I didn't resonate with as somebody that feels very comfortable being cisgendered.
Mm.
Um, I would say And then there were like friend. Otherwise, yeah, I don't remember much really about.
What about now? Like, have you attracted different women compared to when you're in your 20s and unconscious to your own cycle? And you looks like you attracting, you said they were disconnected from their own cycle and hated it. Have you attracted different women in your 30s, do you think?
Yeah, one of the things. So I this was a spiritual thing that came before all of the blood offering stuff, actually. This was in my 20s when I was about 25. A spiritual teacher at the time suggested not having sex on your period,
Mm,
um, more because of how your energy is in a state of release at that
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Um, and actually, it's something that I've enjoyed very much uh, in terms of sexual relationships, is having time where you can't have each other. I think it's very good for sexual health and sexual chemistry.
Mm,
Even though I don't align with the stuff about like the period being dirty and stuff like that, I do like that there's time in the month where you're not available.
mm.
Somebody's not available. I think that's a good,
Yeah, it's your time. It's your time.
yeah, it's a good and it's good for the health of the relationship and the chemistry and stuff, I think. um
Mm, yeah.
so
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, yeah, very interesting. And when you were growing up with your mom, did you ever see her do nice things for herself? Did you know when to rest? And like what kind of mom was she? Was she a go, go, go mom, or was she could go and then rest like in balance, or was she all resting? Or yeah, what was she like?
my mum doesn't rest. My parents still don't rest. They on both sides of my family there's a big workaholic pattern,
Mm,
and they work from home, and like they're both in their 70s and they've got no plans to stop working. So they don't. I mean, my mum is better than my dad. She will like chill out in front of the TV. But like if the work phone rings at 1 in the morning, they'll pick it up.
mm,
Like
yeah.
there's no stop, like the work comes first. And my mum's also quite a busy person. Um, feel like my mum is actually very powerful in her deep feminine magic, but very, very afraid of it. And so does a lot of treading water on the surface and not a lot of dropping in.
Yeah. And how do you think her being in her busyness has affected you on your journey?
I would say that the probably the thing that's required the most healing and is most habitually entrenched is that busyness that
Mm,
was inherited and taught. And um, it's been a big, it's definitely a lifetime wound. Like I think there are lifetime wounds, and that one is definitely one that I feel like is a lifetime wound.
mm. But with the cycle work, have you felt that you've been able to more like take rest when your body really needs it? You've been able to listen more to that. Like that's been a part of your healing journey of that wound.
Yeah, I would say that the cycle work has definitely been part of that journey. Although I feel like part of that journey was also about not just, so my mum's way of dealing with her period was very formulaic,
Mhm.
in like, these are the tampon options, this is what you do. And I think when I first started working with my period, I took that formula into the same thing of like, okay, when you bleed, you're meant to be resting. Because that's the formula that's like there. And actually learning to actually listen
Yeah.
has been the journey rather than
Mm.
following a formula.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Because sometimes you're really energized on your bleed and you don't need to rest, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, very good. I love that. Yeah, I loved how you connected that the formula to your mum, and then you've received the formula with how to deal with your cycle, but now you know the journey is to listen. Yeah, that was very good. I can see it. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, and if you would describe your femininity as intuitive, going with the flow, cooperative, agreeable, nurturing, these are just some of the words that coming to mind for femininity, your inner femininity. Yeah, how do you feel connected to your inner femininity using those
Yeah,
some of
I
those
don't know
words?
if I would. I feel like my journey with the feminine hasn't necessarily led to those words.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me, femininity, like, it used to, I used to label it as those words. And maybe that's partly why I rejected it, because I felt like those words were kind of weak, I guess.
Okay.
So in my, the thing that's probably surprised me most about the feminine is how strong the feminine is, how forceful, in a way that isn't involving any kind of push. How much of a force the feminine is, without any effort, I think is, yeah, maybe the way to describe it best for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you feel in touch with that, how you describe it?
Yeah, I feel like your cycle gets you in touch with that force,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the, like, to me in the feminine there is everything, there is such softness and such gentleness and such storm and such power. There's just everything in it, and in a way it's like connecting to that everythingness
Mm-hmm.
feminine.
Yeah. And then how do you think it, using your own definition, your own femininity shows up in your everyday environment?
I feel like, I guess, that everythingness is best described as cyclical,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and the way of the feminine is the way of being cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
And I live pretty cyclically. um, my life involves a lot of ritual and ceremony and those practices that belong to the way of being cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I'm starting to notice now, And I think this might be more of a collective leaning towards a matrifocal way of being, is that I'm getting less and less comfortable in the masculine way of like pushing.
Mm-hmm.
um I'm finding that way restrictive and frustrating and um not self-generating, not life-giving. Whereas when I'm honoring the feminine way and that way of truly listening and aligning into the season that you're in, it feel, whether it's your cycle or just other things, it feels really like my system seems happy.
Yeah.
seems energized that way.
Yeah. Great articulation. Love it. And then what about in your personality and how you come across? Do you feel that in the vocabulary you use? Do you feel that you're in your feminine?
I think that I feel like I'm learning to be in my feminine. I feel like I'm probably more naturally masculine than I am feminine.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of my personality, definitely my comfort zone is more in that action and the doing and the pushing and the fiery energies. And it's been a very, very long journey, probably another lifetime journey, that's about learning to get comfortable with the feminine.
Mm.
And I feel like I'm about to embody what I was saying at the beginning. Was feels like this particular period has been about the embodiment of that feminine wisdom, maybe particularly of alignment. And it feels like I can't not embody at this time. That makes sense. And it's interesting. I really love cycle work because, you know, I have many friends that have done manifesting on your cycle, and they talk, you know, they talk archetypes. They're like, oh, I'm in my maiden right now. And like it's nice to be having those conversations where women are talking about their seasons and their archetypes and their cycles and explaining the why of their beingness because of those seasons and because of those archetypes.
Yeah, for sure. And then how do you feel, using your own definition, that your mum is in touch with her own femininity, and how has that played out on you in your life?
My mum is not in touch. My mum is in touch with, so manifesting on your cycle came from a course of that I created called Rise of the Divine, which was about the archetypes. Because I got pissed off one day that the archetypes of the feminine were like maiden, mother, and grandmother. And I was like, those are not fully, they do not express the full feminine. Like, you do not go from maiden to mother without a sexual journey. Like, it's so patriarchal view of feminine. And I would say my mum's quite in touch with those stereotypes and those more common archetypes, but I would say she's not in touch with, she's disconnected from her 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 wholeness of her feminine.
Mm,
She's doing the same thing that she did with the tampons, which is ticking the boxes of what femininity is, not necessarily listening.
mm,
Um, and I don't want to criticize her though, because I think she's done really well under the circumstances of her generation and her own life path and journey.
of course. Mm.
But yeah, I
But
would
can you also see how how she was could have impacted and conditioned your probably your early 20s, I'd say, maybe in a way.
I think my mother impacted everything. um, and still does, and in many beautiful, wonderful ways, and in many, many difficult and challenging ways. And my grandmother did too. It's a really nice bit of womb wisdom is that your egg in your mother's um you as an egg in your mother gets formed in the fetus, so you actually get formed in your grandmother's womb.
Ah, wow.
So the womb wisdom doesn't just go from mother to child, it goes from grandmother to child. And so
Mm,
um, those two relationships feel very, very important in terms of how you connect to the feminine energy.
mm. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Cool, isn't it? Yeah.
So many dots, so many dots. And it all relates to like, the cycle,
Yeah.
not like the cycle, the seasons, cycle of of a woman, yeah, all connected. So we've been talking a lot about your mom, and I've just got one question to ask you about your dad. So how do you think your relationship with your father affected your attitude towards men?
Um, I don't feel like my father had that much. Got to be honest, I don't have very many men in my life. Like, live in quite an all-female world.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but just your attitude in general, towards.
Think I'm quite close with my dad.
Okay.
Um, but my dad definitely always used to put men down quite a lot. Um, and so maybe he gave me a slight impression that men are a less evolved part of the species. I don't know. I don't think that's true, but I don't. I would say that the masculine, because I've been with feminine women and masculine women, and I would say that definitely there's been some wounding connected to my father wound around masculine women and their ability to manipulate me. And I think my father was quite manipulative in my childhood.
Mhm.
And so I would say that that's where the pattern has played out less in my relationship with men, because like I said, most men in my life are at a distance.
Mhm.
Um, but the masculine, yeah, the dynamic I have with masculine women is probably somewhat influenced by the relationship that I had with my father,
Mm,
I would say.
yeah, interesting. And do you have a relationship with your brothers now?
So both of my brothers live abroad, and I left home quite early, so I don't have much of a relationship with them.
Mm,
We get on fine when we see each other, but it's not very often.
yeah.
So, um, and actually, we're quite different people. Uh, I wouldn't say that my brothers are people that I would necessarily choose to have as friends.
Mm,
Not because they're bad people, but just because we have very different
yeah.
opinions and interests, and what lights us up is very different.
Mm, yeah. And do you have a partner at the moment? Are you in a relationship?
No,
No. Is that something you dream of having one day?
I feel like, yes, I would like to have a relationship again. I feel like I spent a lot of my 20s and early 30s in relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like in my late 30s it's about understanding the relationship with myself.
Mm,
um but I also don't think that's a forever thing. I just feel like that's a now
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And can I ask how long you've been single for?
uh there's quite a question mark over that. So me and my partner broke up. Me and my partner of 10 years broke up just before the first lockdown in the
Mm-hmm.
UK. But we'd been in a, like, we'd opened up our relationship the year before, and so, and then after that there was a lot of kind of, I was in like three, I was just bouncing between three different people emotionally, um including my partner that we were together for 10 years,
For
somebody
10
I'd
years.
been involved with in our open, when we'd opened up, and somebody new. And so, and I don't really know when all of that ended. It's like it kind of doesn't have a defined cut-off time, but it has ended. It was just very, yeah.
Do you feel you've healed from that relationship or you still?
Yeah, I feel like I'm healing. I feel like my system is healing, not so much from the relationship, but from the crazy three-person drama that happened after the relationship. um Feels like my system's in recovery from that. But
Mm, yeah. And then my last question is with all this manifesting on your cycle, what do you want to manifest in your life? Because I didn't really, I've been listening intently to every video. I don't think I really
I don't think I
received.
ever actually said what I was
Oh, that's
manifesting.
good. That's good. Because I am
um
listening to every word you say.
I will say it before the 28 days is up. What I want to manifest is, so Starlight's never been able to crack the evergreen side of our courses, and so we have all of these courses that like are amazing and collecting dust because we don't know how to market them.
Mm,
um and that's really what I've been manifesting and putting in, and I can understand why I was saying it's a journey about not pushing, is because the part of me that wants to be in my masculine and be in control can't, in that like
yeah.
can't in that side of the business and that reality. Um, there isn't any pressure. It's all about receiving, you know.
Mm.
So that's the that's what I've been manifesting.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. And do you think you'll carry that manifestation on for this new cycle that you've, was that a surprise for you that it just came so quickly or?
So with it, not really, because like I said, my period is very does what it wants.
Yeah,
Like
always
doesn't,
knows best. And the
yeah,
perfect timing as well. Always the
yeah.
perfect timing.
Um, and it always makes sense to me when it comes. Um, there is a practice for manifesting on your cycle that's about tuning into what the next cycle is for. And I haven't done that yet because that
Mm,
comes at the end of the bleed. So I don't actually know what you kind of let your cycle say what it's going to do next when
yeah,
you do the process. So I don't actually know. But I do
yeah,
feel like integration is like, because I've had so much on with this and the cacao, and it does feel like whatever the next cycle will be about is about integration.